Hey guys, it's Kenner and the Murphy guys. I'm reviewing. This is a movie that I was definitely really looking forward to seeing, especially more than the previous movie that I reviewed. But like I said, was definitely really looking forward to seeing this one, and now I finally have, and that of course is Francis Lawrence's highly anticipated film, Red Sparrow. And what Red Sparrow is essentially about is we center on the character of Dominika Egorova, and she is this very highly esteemed and very successful ballet dancer in Russia, and through various circumstances, her life is kind of upended by her uncle, who ends up recruiting her to join this team called the Red Sparrows, who basically are these spies that use their body as a weapon. And eventually she becomes entangled with Joel Edgerton's character, who is an American spy named Nate Nash, and he basically, these two start to get involved, and this kind of shakes up her worldview and kind of makes her start to question her true loyalties, and that's really all I'm going to say. So Red Sparrow in general, I was really looking forward to this movie. I thought this had tons of potential, especially coming off the heels of something as controversial as Mother. As much as I really don't like that film looking back at it, I think the one thing that does stick with me is showing how ballsy of an actress Jennifer Lawrence is. I mean, she definitely takes a lot of risks, and Red Sparrow really looked like it was going to continue that trend for sure. It had such a great cast. Anything with spies, I am always down for, and I have to say, while this film isn't as amazing as I think it could have been, this is still a very well-handled film for sure. I really enjoy Red Sparrow. It's a very well-crafted spy thriller. It's definitely one of the most realistic I've seen in a while, and we're just getting to right now, starting off with the cast. And without a doubt, that is one of the best things about this film. I think, honestly, almost everyone, I'll say almost in a second, I think almost everyone really did a fantastic job here. Let's first talk about Jennifer Lawrence as Dominika, who I have to say, I think this is one of her most challenging roles yet, because not only is she playing a character that is largely very understated, and someone who, throughout the whole film, we're constantly questioning if we should root for or not, she's also playing someone who is Russian, and she has to have, this accent throughout, and, she's very foreign in that regard. It's a very different role for Lawrence, and I think she honestly did a really great job. We do sympathize with Dominika for sure. We can definitely see what she's going through and the harsh realities of what it really means to be a Russian spy and what this could really do to someone. But at the same time, there are points in the film where, like, should I really be rooting for this character? Is she really making the right choices? And I think Lawrence did such a great job with keeping the character captivating. We're not always rooting for her, like I said, but the character does remain compelling throughout pretty much the entire film, and that again is really attributed to Lawrence's performance. I know this is one of her last performances for a while, but she really did a great job here. I think she really did show how talented of an actress she is, and once again, if there is one thing we can say, is she is easily one of the most talented and hardworking today, and I think she did an incredible job here as usual. And then Joel Edgerton as the character of Nate Nash, I also really like, because similar to Dominika, we're not entirely sure if we should be on his side or not. He's very conflicted. There are points in the film where, he's going after these targets, and he's like, wait a second, should I really do that? Is there a way to handle this in a more diplomatic approach? And I really did like getting into that. And seeing these two intersect is one of the best parts of the film. We start off the film, and these two are, going through their daily lives, and once they do come to know each other, that's when the film becomes even stronger. And I thought their chemistry was very well handled here. It wasn't forced at all. You can totally see why these two would connect and why these two would have very similar sort of ideals, and I really did like getting into that. I thought they both did a very good job, and definitely I think some of the most well-handled chemistry I've seen this year so far. And then the rest of the cast, I thought also was very strong. Matthias Schoenaerts, sorry if I'm pronouncing his name wrong, as her uncle Ivan. I really like this character, because this is someone who could come across as a bit of a creep, and someone who's just very weird, but Schoenaerts really does a pretty good job here with making this character feel somewhat endearing. Like, he always is on Dominica's side, but you can also see that he's so heavily involved, you know, with the Russian embassy and with his whole group and things like that. That it is sometimes hard to do things entirely, make sure everything goes entirely in her favor. And I really did like getting into that with his character. You know, you really don't, again, he's not the greatest guy in the world. I really did like the direction they ended up taking his character. And for me, almost every scene he was in, he didn't necessarily steal, but I thought he did a phenomenal job throughout the film. I really do love his character, and he definitely was very well done. Charlotte Rampling, I also really liked as simply the matron. She's just the headmistress of the Sparrow School. She's cutthroat, she's tough as nails, and she really isn't, you know, she is willing to tell you exactly to your face what she thinks of you. She really puts these characters through the ringer, and I really loved her in the film. She was great. Jeremy Irons was really good here. Let's talk about Mary-Louise Parker, because while, like I said, virtually almost everyone does a really great job, she is the one glaring error within this film where it's like, why was she cast? Because I'm not going to say that she's a terrible actress, but she's terrible in this film. I think almost every scene she's in is pretty much undercut, and it's because they try to make her the comedic foil, and it just does not work whatsoever. She has some really cringy scenes in the film. Thankfully, she's not in the film a lot, but when she's in it, you really do feel how out of place she really is here. I think she was honestly really miscasted, and I don't think she... Again, her character needed to be here. It's just the way they handled her character I really was not a fan of. But other than that, everyone really did a good job. This is a very solid cast overall, and I was largely, for the most part, impressed by pretty much everyone here. So now let's get to the directing and the writing, because the directing by Francis Lawrence is probably one of the best aspects of this entire film. Now, sure, I have enjoyed his directing before. I absolutely love Catching Fire. I think that is about as great as an installment in some sort of franchise as you can get. It's a near masterpiece in my opinion. Mockingjay Part 1, I actually do have a soft spot for. I think it's a very well done setup. The payoff, on the other hand, is extremely lackluster. Part 2, I am not really a fan of, and I know I gave the movie like a B+, but looking back, it's not memorable at all. It's very lackluster and kind of undercuts the entire franchise for me, but his directing here is definitely something to point out, and I think definitely is a high point in his career, because what I really loved about his directing is how serious he handles the nature of this story, because sure, you could come across this and say there is something exploitative about this, and it seems like they're just trying to make this torture porn, and I would completely disagree with that. I think the tone here is reasonably dark and really lacks a lot of hope, again, because of what these characters are getting themselves into. This is obviously a very tough job, and it's something where it changes their entire worldview, and I really did love, how Francis Lawrence did portray that. He portrays it as very dreary. He really doesn't hold back. He shows you the grim realities of being a, spy, and I thought he really did handle that quite well here. I mean, there was a point where Francis Lawrence said that he wanted to add more humor, and I'm glad he didn't do that, honestly, because I think going about this the way he did, I think that really did strengthen the film overall. The screenplay here, though, is something I also really love, because the writing in this movie is very well done, especially when it comes to Dominica as a character. She starts off the film and she's very meek. She's someone who kind of needs everyone to do things for her. She's very innocent, and you don't really see her transforming into what she ends up being at the end of the film, which is very, she has way more agency and she is way more powerful than she really was, and I really did love that transformation throughout the film, and it honestly did feel like we went through a, legit character arc with her, and I think the writing was very well done. That's not really much of a praise, because that's just saying, oh, the character was well written. What really impressed me, like I said, is how well constructed this story really is, especially, I'd say, the first hour of this film, because it takes a while for Nash and Dominica to actually meet up. The first half of this film is us seeing them go through their daily lives, and, Nash as a, American Spy and what he's going through, contrasted with Dominica's very, treacherous life and what she's going through as well. And I thought that was very well handled. I really did love the writing there. I thought it was very, like I said, just really interesting overall. And the film really does have a lot to say when it comes into, what being a spy is all about. And sure, there are some scenes in this film that I think is likely to offend some, especially given the untimely, the untimely release date of this film for sure. It's definitely not the most ideal time to put this film out, but unlike the last film I reviewed, this film actually does have a reason for that. It's not just there because they're trying to be gratuitous and excessive. It really did feel like they were trying to just, again, not hold back and show really what someone in that position would go through, and I thought it was very well handled in that way. I will say, however, as good as the story is, it is a little bit lengthy, and there are points in this film where I do think it bits off a bit more than it can chew, specifically with Mary-Louise Parker's character. Her character is just... she's there and she does what she needs to do, but in the end, she just feels kind of inconsequential. I mean, sure, she is important to the story, but I don't think she's as important as the film really makes her out to be. And in general, I think especially this very long sequence between her and Lawrence really did drag. I will say, though, there weren't many scenes like that. I was, for the most part, really into the story. I like getting into her transformation. There's a lot of stuff that Dominica does get into in this film that I really did like. Like, for example, as the film goes on, she does start to gain attraction for Nash, but of course she's told that she needs to try to keep feelings out of it, and she has to do what she can to tread lightly and to just treat everyone the same pretty much and to be emotionless. But of course, with Nash and the connection that these two do share, it's so strong that it's kind of hard for her to keep that, and she does kind of consider the possibility of foregoing that entirely. And I don't want to get into where that ends up going, but it was a very compelling thing to see her go through, and I really did like where they ended up taking that in the film. I thought that was very well done. Also, the action. A lot of people are comparing this movie to Atomic Blonde, and let me just say right now, that is exactly the wrong comparison, because other than a few little plot points here and there is nothing about this movie that is similar to Atomic Blonde. It does not have the comic book feel that the movie did, and it's not really a fun movie. This is a very dark, dreary, very hopeless movie that, again, is just showing you why this is one of the worst jobs someone could ever endure, and they do a very good job with getting into that. And sure, there are some scenes that are very fucked up, but again, I thought they did a good job in not holding back there. The cinematography is some of the best I have seen all year. One of the coolest things about this movie that I don't think a lot of people are talking about is, again, the contrast between Dominica and Nash. And it's so strong that even the camera work really does go into that. Whenever we see Dominica, she is placed on the left side, while Nash, I don't know if you guys noticed it, but every time you see him, he's always on the right-hand side of the camera. And again, I could be looking into it too much, but to me, it seemed like that was showing the contrast. That was showing the differing opinions that they have, and the middle is where they intersect, and the middle is where, they find that common ground. And I thought that the camera work really did play a lot into that. It's a very beautiful film to look at. It's got a lot of just really well done cinematography, but again, it's not glorifying any of this violence. It's not glorifying, the sort of stuff that they're getting, the nature of the plot and things like that. They really do show how grisly it is, and some people said the cinematography was so gorgeous that it made the acts of macabre not really feel that way, and I would completely disagree. I think it worked very well, and I thought they did a very good job with it. The score by James Newton Howard is easily one of his best, particularly in the first 10 minutes. I really loved the score here. I'm not saying Oscar-worthy or anything, but I thought the score was very well constructed, and it's definitely one of those scores where I will end up listening to it on its own, because it honestly is a beautiful score to listen to, and I really did love it. Also, let's talk about the action in this movie, because like I said, the film does draw a lot of comparisons to Atomic Blonde, and Dissimilar to that film, the action in here is not really fun. In fact, it's quite serious, and they really don't hold back. But there's not really many of them. There's not a lot of action scenes in here. There's a really well done car chase in the first half of the film, and again, contrasted to what was going on with Dominica, it was very effective. But this film is much more dialogue driven than something like, say, Atomic Blonde, and I think that is really where the comparisons stop, other than the fact that it's a Russian spy and, things like that, and that Lawrence does have a very similar haircut to Theron's character in Atomic Blonde. Other than that, there really aren't too many comparisons, and again, I think it's just a very different film entirely. Now, I will admit, in terms of the editing, the movie is a bit too long, and I do think there are some significant sections that they could have cut down. Not really anything they could cut out, because everything really is detrimental to the story. It's just one of those films where you're watching a scene, and you're seeing, and you're like, alright, wrap this up now, and you're like, wait, what, this is still going? Like, I thought this ended, but no, it keeps going, and there definitely were a few scenes, particularly in the second act, that I really do think they could have cut down, such as that interaction between Parker and Lawrence. I do think they could have cut that down overall. But in the end, guys, I really am satisfied with Red Sparrow. I think this is a very well-constructed film that, again, really does get into the harsh realities of what someone could go through in that situation. It's got great performances almost all across the map, minus that one Parker performance, which, in my opinion, again, I think really was out of place here. I don't think they needed it in the film. Her character was important. It's just the way they constructed her character I was not really a huge fan of. But other than that, guys, I really did enjoy Red Sparrow overall. It is a very well done film. It's not for everyone, I'll say that. In fact, some people did walk out of my theater because they were just kind of very uneasy and very, I think some of the actions in the film are very questionable. But if you can handle it, and if you can put aside all of the, again, the untimeliness of when this did come out, which, I mean, the timing really was not the best, I think this is still a very well done film, and I definitely do recommend you guys check it out. And I am going to give Red Sparrow overall a B. But other than that, guys, in my review of Red Sparrow, let me know what you guys thought of this movie overall, left your thoughts on it. Like I said, definitely check this one out. It's not for everyone. It is likely to offend some people, but I do think it is a film that is definitely worth checking out, especially for Lawrence's performance and, some of the other stuff that's going on. But that's in my review. Hope you guys enjoy. See you guys in my next video, which, guys, stick around because I will be doing a Oscars live stream tonight. I already talked about it, but I will be doing it with, of course, my good friend Kane LaPlante. It should be a lot of fun. We had very differing opinions when it came to the nominations last year. Not as much this year, but it still should be a lot of fun to do. I always do enjoy doing these live streams for you guys. We'll see you guys in my next video, and we'll see you guys for that. Okay, bye.